Welcome to the Head of the Charles instructional video. As you can see, I'm training hard for this year's regatta, but conditioning alone will not ensure that you or I have a good experience and produce the results we want. As the popularity of the Head of the Charles has grown from year to year, more and more rowers from across North America and around the world are showing up to race in their first Head of the Charles. Having the opportunity to practice on the course is more difficult now that the regatta's racing takes place over 2 days. We hope that this video will help you become familiar with the Head of the Charles course. We want all competitors to have a fair, fun, and safe race. The Head of the Charles is a very challenging course. During the 3-mile race, you'll have to negotiate 5 major turns, pass through the arches of 7 bridges, and row past 8 boathouses and launching areas. And if that's not challenging enough, you'll be racing in front of the largest and noisiest bunch of rowing spectators in the world. To have a successful row, you need to know the course. You need to know the line you want to take and where you can go if your line isn't available. You also need to know the racing rules. The penalties for breaking the racing rules can be very costly to your results. If you're racing in a team boat, be sure that everyone in your crew knows the regatta rules and understands that they are in effect for the entire regatta weekend. Not only when you're racing, but also when you're warming up, returning from your race, or practicing. One thing has not changed from the first regatta that had 100 boats competing, and that's good sportsmanship. Good sportsmanship has always prevailed at the Head of the Charles, whether it's stopping to assist a rower in distress, warning a competitor about their pending collision with a bridge abutment, or not pushing their right-of-way to the point of collision. Good sportsmanship is in everyone's best interest. Well, good luck and row hard, and don't forget to read the rules and information in your registration package.
This is the Head of the Charles Regatta, America's fall rowing pageant and the world's largest head race. During the next few minutes, we're going to show you and describe the Head of the Charles race course and offer some advice and suggestions on how to make your participation safer, successful, and more enjoyable. Most of what you'll see and hear consists of guided tours of the course and some specific coaching advice. The majority of crews will be launching from the falls area, the finish area launching site, which is near the finish line. This is a very busy area and the water is shallow. As you approach the docks to land, or as you put your boat in the water, be aware of rocks. Don't get blown onto the shore while waiting to land or launch. Move out toward the center of the river. Be courteous and hold water if necessary so you don't crowd your fellow competitors. A great service the Head of the Charles Regatta lends to competitors is oar handlers and dockmasters. The dockmaster's word is law. You must follow what the dockmaster says at all times, particularly with the time you're taking on the dock. Their job is to expedite the regatta. The regatta has to operate on time due to the volume of competitors. There is no room for delay at any of the stations. Be very careful as you put your boat in water and as you move away from shore due to possible underwater obstructions. The river does change throughout the seasons, so you can't count on it being the same each year. Err on the side of caution and stay 10 to 15 feet from where the water meets the shore. As you make your way down the river in the travel lane heading towards the start, you must stay inside the orange buoys at all times. As you approach Elliott Bridge in the travel lane, you must be very alert. This is not a time to be checking foot stretchers or to be doing drills. Thousands of competitors and shells need to move downstream. Marshals and river control may give you a nudge to keep moving if need be. As you go through the Elliott Bridge in the travel lane, it is a very tight turn and is the least safe point of the river. You will need to power up with ports as you go under the right-hand arch. Follow the corner around aggressively. The space between the orange buoys and the white buoys is considered completely out of bounds for the hulls of all racing and non-racing boats. Stay tight to the shore and be careful about interfering with races. Make sure you keep moving while in the travel lane. If you are a faster crew, don't bump into anybody. Pause drill is always the correct way to handle that situation. If the Elliott Bridge is the most dangerous turn on the travel lane, the Harvard Boathouse is only marginally less tricky. There is an enormous amount of activity at this boathouse, so you must pay close attention and be prepared to stop and wait if need be. At the same time, the river does get wider here, so if you do have clear water, you can exercise some more pressure and do some warm-up. As always, the emphasis needs to be on prudence, safety, and common sense. The Weeks Footbridge is also an extreme turn to starboard when you are in the travel lane. This turn needs to be navigated very carefully so crews don't run onto the race course. After the Weeks Footbridge, you may also use warm-up power strokes if it is safe to do so, and using extreme caution. Near the Riverside Boat Club, you will pass the area known as Saddle, Singles and Doubles Launch at Magazine Beach, on your left on the Cambridge side of the river. Those scullers will be coming across the race course under the supervision of a marshal so they don't interfere with anyone's race. Be aware of these scullers. They will then proceed down to the start of the race in the travel lane. No 8s or 4s are allowed at Saddle. The last bridge you need to navigate when coming downstream in the travel lane is the BU Bridge. The most important thing here is that you should not use the arch on the far right, the Boston side of the river, because it is too narrow. Use the middle arch and the third arch from the right to continue downstream. After you pass the starting area when heading downstream, proceed further down the river before you turn around to get into the starting queue, or if you want to do a warm-up. If you choose to warm up, come all the way down and around the large yellow buoys, unless otherwise directed by a marshal, turning into the basin warm-up area. Make loops around the buoys in a counterclockwise direction for your warm-up.
I always prepare my crews, my coxswains particularly, to pay attention to safety. It's very difficult warming up. You've got crews that may make mistakes and come at you from all different angles, so you really want to be super alert. Leaving the dock, racing, and returning. Crews that wander out onto the course can find themselves in harm's way.
You must be in the starting marshalling area, warmed up, ready to race, and in numerical order 5 minutes prior to the start of your race. Because of the nature and size of the regatta, it is impossible to wait for latecomers. In the marshalling area, as you get into the starting chute, the odd-numbered crews need to get in line on the left side between the orange buoy and yellow buoy. The even-numbered crews should line up on the right side between the yellow buoy and green buoy. As you come up to the starting queue, you will alternate and follow the numbers sequentially to the start line in one single file line. Race marshals will guide you and will bring the boats up in groups of 10. Remember to listen to the race marshals and follow their instructions at all times. As we look over the shoulder of the starting line timers, let's listen to the official race announcer call boats to the start. This should give you a good idea of what you can expect to hear in the final moments leading up to your race.
St. Mary's Road.
Thank you. Moseley Boat Club. Full pressure Moseley. Let's go to full pressure Moseley. Ease off Syracuse. Ease off Syracuse. Princeton Training Center. Full pressure. Row.
At this point, as you near the start line, coxswains and scullers should begin to build their power under the control of the starter from the BU boathouse. Sometimes they'll tell you to firm up, sometimes they'll tell you to back off and paddle. Nonetheless, coxswains and scullers, you must pay attention to the marshals as well as the starting command. Here we go, about 5 strokes to go until you cross the start line of the head of the Charles. Building now at 3/4 pressure. Building now to full pressure. And on this one, you're on the course as you pass the yellow triangle buoys with the large S on them. Cross the start line at optimum speed so you will be timed at your fastest. Have a good, clean start. Do not try to win the race at the start. Passing is permitted prior to the BU bridge using extreme caution. Overtaking boats must ensure room is available to complete a safe pass and are subject to a safety penalty if an overtaken boat is forced into an abutment. The railroad trestle bridge's second arch from the right is the preferred route. The arch closest to the Cambridge shore on the right may be used, but use extreme caution. Once you get through the BU Bridge, you can start to see the orange buoys on the Boston side, the port side, and the green buoys on the Cambridge side, the starboard side. We are going to take you along the shortest and most desirable course, which is along the starboard side green buoys. This line, if you can claim it, will save you many strokes and several meters on the course. So, if you can, bring your hull over next to the green buoys off the starboard side of the hull. During racing, your oar blades are allowed to cross over the buoys. However, if any part of your hull crosses a buoy, you will be assessed a 10-second penalty. The green buoys are placed specifically for the protection of the competitors against any submerged objects along the shore. Again, along this stretch, the first segment of the race, the intention of all crews and scullers should be to optimize their base pace. As we round the Magazine Beach turn, you'll see the singles and doubles launch on your right. You're now entering the segment of the course called the Powerhouse Stretch. The Powerhouse Stretch is 3/4 of a mile of straight, unimpeded racing, and you will encounter 2 bridges. This is where the race generally begins to develop as people settle into their racing beat and those with speed look ahead and find who they may be able to overtake. It is the responsibility of a slower crew to yield the line chosen by the passing crew in a timely manner. As you come into the Powerhouse Stretch, you can look down the river and you will go by the Riverside Boat Club. The green buoys are in place to keep racing crews a safe distance from crews landing and launching at this dock. At Riverside Boat Club, you will hear the first announcer of the race course, where you will hear your name or your team's name called. We continue running straight down the Cambridge side, the starboard side of the course, and you should start to aim for the center arches of the upcoming River Street Bridge. Most coxswains prefer to take a line through the center arch, however the right-hand arch is also open. Again, this is a very good area to make a move, or to look ahead and decide when you might want to make a move. As you come through the River Street Bridge, you are now about 20 strokes away from the end of the first mile of the race, which is marked by the yellow pyramid buoy with the 1 on it and a stripe on the retaining wall. Now you're into mile 2, and this is the arch of the Western Avenue Bridge. Again, both arches are open, and many coxswains will prefer a line through the center arch. Again, still on the Powerhouse Stretch, and now approaching the turn at the Weeks Footbridge. After you come through the Western Avenue Bridge, head towards the blue tower of Lowell House at Harvard University, which coxswains and scullers will be able to see. If you follow that line, it will bring you towards the Cambridge side, the starboard side of the bridge. Both arches of the Weeks Footbridge are open, though it is advised to use only the right-hand arch to avoid a crash. The best crews approach this bridge by swinging wide to starboard before entering the Weeks Arch. After you come through the Weeks Bridge, you will need to turn very hard toward the Boston side, the port side, as you exit.
The Weeks Footbridge is at the end of the Powerhouse Stretch, and so you have 700, 800, 900 meters of straightaway going into it. So for especially the cox boats, I try to make sure that the coxswain takes a look at what's happening in front of them and tries to position themselves in a situation that they can get a clean turn, a turn going through the Weeks Bridge that sets them up and they don't get pushed out. If you approach that Weeks Bridge on the outside of any crew, you're going to have a really hard time making the turn. It's a hard turn anyway, and if you don't have a clean shot going through, you're just not going to be a very efficient coxswain or crew getting through there. So I think you have to use that stretch from Riverside Boathouse into the Weeks Footbridge to set yourself up for the turn.
Here's the turn into Weeks. If you go through the center, line yourself up with the name on the bridge with the John of John W. Weeks. Then cut hard toward the Boston buoy line, the orange buoys. And now this is where your straightest point of the course is. Start pointing yourself towards the left-hand abutment of center arch of the upcoming Lars Anderson Memorial Bridge. That will keep you from going too far toward the starboard side of the course. For the best line, do not follow the orange buoy line obsessively. This is another stretch that is very good for passing. If you're being passed, you must yield. You do not want to impede the path of a faster boat behind you. It's the rules of racing and the rules of sportsmanship, and is also a matter of safety. Avoid collisions and entanglements at all costs. A clean course, even if it feels like it's slower, is inevitably going to be faster than having to stop after a collision or entanglement. As you approach the docks of the Weld Boathouse on the right, begin to think about how you will need to adjust as you come out of the Lars Anderson Bridge. It's not so much how you go into the bridge, it's how you come out of it. For the best line, start to ease over toward starboard with a little bit of port pressure and bring yourself through the center arch of the Lars Anderson Bridge as close as possible to center. After coming through the Lars Anderson Bridge, you should do your best to stay away from the orange buoys off port, as they draw you off the straightest course and will cost you time. The left-hand side of the river is also a high traffic area at Harvard's Newell Boathouse. The straightest course drives you toward the white apartment building ahead. As you come up to the 2-mile mark, you will see that the buoys start coming out to meet the competitors on the course. Remember, you can put your oar blades over the buoys, but be careful not to put your hull over them, or it will mean a 10-second penalty. As you hit the 2-mile point, you'll be coming to a difficult, very long turn. This is the last mile, and you should now start to crowd over and hug the orange buoy line for the shortest course. Even for elite crews, this mile can seem like it goes on forever, particularly the long turn known as the Big Curve. As crews fade or as crews surge, this is where some very exciting racing can occur. This is where competitors need to be aware of who's moving and their potential need to give way to a faster crew. There's plenty of water here before the Elliott Bridge. If you're going to make a move, do it in this half-mile stretch between the 2-mile mark and the Elliott Bridge. The white buoys on the left, which are now visible off the orange buoys, are a neutral zone. They must be adhered to by the crews in the travel lane. Again, the tightest course is the one we're steering along the orange buoys.
As a coxswain, you want to take your own course and not everybody else's, but often your course is dictated to you by the speed of other crews. And I always tell my coxswains, if at all possible, to avoid any sort of contact with other boats, because you usually end up coming off worse. Someone may get a penalty, but they don't take any time off your time, and your crew just gets really excited. They have adrenaline burn, and then they have a big flop after that, and so it really doesn't help. It's better to back off your power, come through clean. You probably end up saving more time than getting aggressive and getting in a melee.
As you come around the curve, you will start to see Regatta headquarters and the VIP director's tent coming into view. Keep following the orange buoys, but set yourself up for the upcoming Elliott Bridge. Again, it's not so important how you enter the bridge as how you exit. You want to be on an angle toward the starboard side, toward the Belmont Hill dock, which is just after the Elliott Bridge on the right. You can still be hugging the orange buoys as you begin coming past the Cambridge Boat Club on the right. Expect lots of noise here from the announcers and fans. Try to go through at the left side of the center arch for the best line. The right-hand arch is also open, but it's not advised unless you need an escape route to avoid collision. Now coming straight out of the Elliott Bridge toward the Belmont Hill dock on the right. This is the straightest course and the preferred course. It is sometimes wise to hold back on the other side of the Elliott Bridge so you can get this inside line. You will likely save yourself 8 to 10 seconds by getting to the inside of this turn close to the green buoys. As you pass the last green buoy at the end of Belmont Hill Dock, you are now free to move in closer to the trees. Use common sense here, as winds or current may have brought branches or obstructions into the course. So you may not want to get in too tight to the trees, but there's nothing to prevent you from doing it legally. Now we come straight into the final segment of the race. The last turn has been accomplished, and you're heading towards the finish line. The finish line buoys are now in sight for the coxswains, and you'll have about 65 or 70 strokes to go to finish the race. Off to your port side, a small wooden boardwalk begins to make its presence known visibly, and the coxswains or crew should sit up and be aware that they're running out of time either to pass somebody or to shave seconds off their time. Here you have about 20 strokes to go to the finish of the head of the Charles. You will see the trailer on the left, which is for the timers and race officials, and also 2 yellow pyramid buoys that mark the finish line. It is best to follow through the center between the 2 finish line buoys and make sure you push hard all the way through before you paddle. You have now finished the head of the Charles Regatta. At this point, you've finished the race and you must continue to paddle. It is mandated to keep moving and do not stop so that you are out of the way of the competitors finishing behind you. Keep going, following the long white buoy line on your left. It is important to respect that buoy line for safety reasons, as well as for the convenience of letting people get down the travel lane. The falls area, the finish area launching site, will be too crowded if people cut across this buoy line, and anybody who tries could easily lose a fin due to the shallow water and obstructions in the water. Race marshals will help guide you through this area and let you know when it's safe to turn back into the travel lane. Now that you have had a full tour of the course, we're going to show you some of the problem areas, violations of the rules, and examples of good teamwork and sportsmanship. The marshalling area can get very congested, so listen carefully to the announcer and race officials and follow their instructions. The second four, shown here, has left a suitable gap going into the BU bridge. Remember, you may place your oars over the buoys, but if you let your hull go outside them, you will be assessed a 10-second penalty. After the BU bridge, this four has already caught the crew that started ahead of them, possibly because they didn't leave enough of a gap at the start of the race. The Cox has already called out to the boat ahead to yield. As you'll see, the first boat does start to turn to port and the center of the river. Unfortunately, the leading boat doesn't leave quite enough room for an easy pass without the chance of hitting oars, and the overtaking boat must again ask them to yield. This time, the lead rowers display good sportsmanship and turn sharply to port and out of the way. If yielding is done properly, the overtaking crew should not have to change their course, and 3/8 can maneuver around the Magazine Beach curve without incident. The big curve, just before the Cambridge Boat Club and the Elliott Bridge, is another area of congestion. The decreasing radius turn forces many competitors wide, and you must be careful not to interfere with overtaking boats. Unfortunately, the leading four shown here on the outside does not leave enough room for a clear pass, and the resulting clashing of oars with the overtaking boat has disastrous results for both crews. In a case like this, the Coxes must immediately take control of the situation and clear the boats quickly so they don't jeopardize the race of another boat coming up behind them. In this situation, 3/8 were able to successfully squeeze through the center arch of the Elliott Bridge all at the same time, thanks to proper yielding and good steering. The right-hand arch of the Elliott Bridge is available for navigation, but 2/8 definitely do not fit through, and it is not considered to be the best line. The final turn starting at the Belmont Hill Boathouse has the last set of green buoys that you must navigate around. Single sculler number 22 cuts inside the first buoy, but then recovers to make the next two. This single hits the buoy, but it pops up on the wrong side of his boat. At the conclusion of your race, remember to continue rowing upriver well clear of the finish line, past the white line of buoys. Jam-ups can occur when crews don't go far enough upriver before turning around. Now we would like to take you on one more tour of the head of the Charles Racecourse, this time at a very accelerated pace. On the paddle, half pressure, full pressure, go, BU Bridge, River Street Bridge, one-mile marker, Western Avenue Bridge, Weeks Footbridge, Lars Anderson Bridge, two-mile marker, Big Curve, Cambridge Boat Club, Elliott Bridge, Belmont Hill Boathouse, finish line.